If all else fails, sometimes the old ways are the best.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what's going on, folks? LoganJYA here, and today we are bringing back one of my favorite decks of all time, one of my favorite ones to profile for you guys, and that is the Necrogoon strategy, rebuilt and revitalized for 2023. This deck is still as diabolical as ever. As you guys know, Necro Valley is a win-con against the tier element strategy, and a deck that turbos into Necro Valley better than no other I think has a pretty good chance in this current metagame. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. I read them all, and I'm more than happy to help you out. Also, don't forget to leave a like and help us by subscribing on our mission to 10K subs in this new year of 2023. I know we're going to make it, guys, and it's all thanks to you for your continued support. But hey, I don't want to run down too long. Let's get into this brand new 2023 Necrogoon deck profile. Let's get into it. Alright guys, back by popular demand, I have revitalized the Necrogoon strategy for the new year, January 2023. Again, I really appreciate you guys asking to see this profile. It is one of my favorite lists of all time, and we always end up revisiting it from time to time. And today I'm going to show you a way you can play this deck in 2023. I'm going to point out some of the keynote changes, some of the things to stay aware of when you're playing it in this current metagame, what it's good against, and what it struggles against. But without further ado, let's dive into the profile right now. Alright folks, starting things off with the monster lineup, you already know you're going to play 3 copies of Gravekeeper's Commandant. This gets you into the Necro Valley as fast as possible. All you gotta do is pitch it to the grave, and it gives you that free old search. Now, as you guys are very aware, if you've seen my previous list, you know, even though this is a Gravekeeper deck, we play very few Gravekeeper monsters, and we're really just using Commandant to enable us to get to Necro Valley as fast as possible. But there are a lot of times where you're going to be normal summoning this guy and trying to beat your opponent down with those 2100 swings. So keep that in mind that not only is he your searcher, but sometimes you're going to want to hold him in hand in case your Dragoon gets outed, or you're trying to apply additional pressure in the late game just to get in that free damage. So if you have multiples, maybe don't pitch them all, maybe save one just in case. Unless, of course, you got Royal Tribute, in which case you want to empty out your hand of all monsters as fast as possible so you can resolve that Royal Tribute without taking a neg. The next new card that we're featuring in this list is actually 2 copies of Kashitira Fenrir. Now, here's the thing. I only own 1 copy. In fact, I don't even own this one. I'm borrowing it from my housemate. Shout out to SBK Ball Pit. So I'm actually subbing the other slot with 1 Gravekeeper's Heretic, which you guys may be familiar with. This is an unaffected Gravekeeper monster. It's another cool way of applying pressure, and he's really hard to get off the board. Only way he's really able to be removed is by swinging over him by battle. But if you back him up with things like Forbidden Droplets or Torrential Tribute, that makes it a little bit more difficult for them to deal with it. So ideally in this slot, I would be playing 2 copies of Fenrir. That's just a fact. But if you don't have 2, you can easily sub it out for the Gravekeeper's Heretic. 100%. It's another cool inarchetypal way of applying pressure against the opponent. But what I really love about Fenrir is that it's a free summon, and although it does conflict with the summon of your Dragoon, and if you have a Dragoon already established, then yeah, you're not going to be using the Fenrir. So he just becomes either discard fodder, or you'll hold him into the later game, or he doesn't really help out much at all. But here's the thing, it's really important in this deck to have a backup plan. That's one thing I've learned from playing it after all these years, is that you need to have a backup plan outside of just Dragoon, because if your Dragoon gets outed, then you're basically conceding. You don't want to be in that situation, and that's why having something like double Fenrir as a backup plan that generates free advantage, that applies pressure on the opponent, and puts them in sticky situations, it's a good thing to try out playing. In testing, this has come up multiple times. It's a really cool tech, and I've really been enjoying it. But let me know what you guys think about that in the comments down below. Let's move on. For the rest of the monsters, we've got the 1 Red Eyes Wyvern that goes with the Red Eyes Insights, as well as the Dragoon package. Now here's the thing. Don't flame me too hard for this really nasty, ugly gold rare, because I love this artwork, I really do. I just want to shout out how awesome this artwork is on this Red Eyes. They had to put it in gold though? Come on, guys. So what I'm really pleading for is Konami, please, if you see this, which I doubt you do, but if you see this, please reprint this as a secret rare or something that's not this hideous gold. That is literally it for the monster lineup, folks. You guys know we keep it consolidated as can be, so let's move on into the spells. The main spell of the strategy, and what makes this deck such an absolute monster in this format, is the Necro Valleys, okay? It's the main thing that makes Gravekeepers tick, boosting them by 500 and stopping all interactions with the graveyard. Guys, This obliterates tier elements. Do I even have to explain why? They cannot fuse out the grave when you have Necro Valley up. That's what makes this such a viable deck right now. Now here, there are a couple other downsides that I'll talk about later that make it not so great, but Necro Valley is absolutely insane. And that's why this is one of my favorite die roll decks. If you win the die roll, you should be winning the match, in theory, especially if you're playing against those tier element players, because they will not be able to play underneath your Necro Valley. You stick up the Dragoon, you just make it too difficult for them to even get into the game. And that is what you do here. So of course, we max out the Necro Valleys. Same deal along with that into the Gravekeeper lineup. We're playing triple copies of Necro Valley Throne because this searches out your commandant, which of course searches your Necro Valley. We want to get to Necro Valley as fast as possible and have consistent strategies to get you to it. The other effect of it does come up sometimes, but very rarely. It can give you a second normal summon to bring out your Gravekeeper's commandant if you needed to apply additional pressure. So just keep that in mind. It does have that second effect, but more oftentimes than not, you're just using it to search commandant to get you into your Necro Valley. Now, again, the next card in the archetype that makes this such a diabolical strategy is the Royal Tribute. Now, yes, oh my goodness, the look of fear in the opponent's eyes when you rip every single monster card out of their hand after resolving a Royal Tribute, it is unbelievable. It is one of the most satisfying feelings when you're playing such a degenerate strategy like Necrogoon, is resolving that Royal Tribute. And it also deals with the only hand trap that actually stops this deck is the Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. So you hit that Royal Tribute with the Necro Valley on field, rip out that Ash Blossom from that Sprite player's hand, and then you're free to resolve your Red Eyes Fusion without worry. It is great. So obviously this is one of your main win cons. When you see this going first, you should be winning that match as long as it's paired with a Necro Valley and a Red Eyes Fusion. If you see 2 out of the 3, you're usually chilling, but if you see all 3, you should definitely be winning. Moving on, triple copies of Red Eyes Fusion. Of course, we want to get into that Dragoon as fast as possible. Verite isn't a thing anymore, so we got to do it the old-fashioned way by fusion summoning it, and we play the triple copies of Red Eyes Insight to search out the fusion, get into it even faster. Moving on from there, consistency piece, we play triple copies of the Pot of Prosperity. You just want to dig through your deck to find those, as many of those 2 out of 3, or all 3 of those pieces as possible, them being Necro Valley, Red Eyes Fusion, and Royal Tribute. So of course we want to max out the consistency and play the Pot of Prosperity. The 1 copy of Terraforming to go along with it, it's just an additional copy of Necro Valley, and unfortunately we don't have access to mine anymore, but I think the game's better off without mine anyway, in my opinion. Finally, for the spells, triple copies of Forbidden Droplets. This is one of 2 hard-going second cards that we play in the main, and obviously it's just to deal with the things that make it so we can't play. The biggest threats to this particular deck are Omni Negates, because they can negate Red Eyes Fusion, right? So things like Baronne de Fleur, if the tier element player is playing the Diviner package, you have to use it to negate that, as well as the Rukalos. The Rukalos is able to negate the Red Eyes Fusion, which means you got to stay ready. Now, another good thing on our end here is that there are a lot of tier players who are no longer maining the Crime. So that means if you unfortunately do lose the die roll, you won't have to deal with that counter trap game 1 more oftentimes than not, which is going to be one of the main things that stops you from being able to resolve the Red Eyes Fusion, even if you did have something like Forbidden Droplets. But anyway, that's the logic behind playing the Droplets. We do play some other things to try and circumvent the Rukalos. So that's it for the spells. Moving into the trap cards, we've got triple copies of Solemn Strike and triple copies of Torrential Tribute. Now, everyone knows that these are my mainstay staples when it comes to playing the Necrogoon deck, and you may be wondering, why would you play Torrential Tribute in a format so dominated by tier elements? It will trigger all their effects. Well, let me put this out there for you. If you have Necro Valley on the field, you do not give a single crap about Torrential Tributing a tier player, because nothing will float and use their grave effects to fuse. In fact, the Necro Valley is going to be your key enabler to stopping that from happening and making the Torrential as high impact as possible, because to out the Dragoon, they're going to have to climb into their extra deck without fusion summoning, which means you can really catch them off guard with a powerful Torrential that will set them back ages. So that's why I think Torrential is a really good card. Pair that with the Solemn Strike, which is just inherently good in all different types of situations, and you're setting yourself up for success. The final trap cards that I've decided to play in this list are the triple copies of Infinite Impermanence in the main. The logic behind this being, of course, is yes, it is a hand trap when you're going first, and it's good in a lot of different matchups like Floowandery, Sprite, and against the tiers, but it's also an amazing 6th card to draw, or a card to reveal off Pot of Prosperity that can help deal with either Omni Negates or the effect of Rukalos that would stop you from being able to resolve your Red Eyes Fusion. So keep those things in mind. That's why I decided to put the Imperm in this particular particular build. The final card I put in here, I really was having trouble deciding what to do for the 40th slot. I decided to keep in the one copy of Metaverse. Now, Metaverse is not as good without having the Mystic Mine as an alternative target to activate from the deck. I really dislike only going for Necro Valley with it. However, you can lull your opponent into a false sense of security when they Cosmic that Necro Valley and you still got that one back row. They're thinking it might be, oh, it's a strike or a torrential, but I'm a tier player, so I don't really care. No, it's a Metaverse, and I'm going to slap up that Necro Valley right real quick again once you try and go for those effects in the grave. So it can still catch people off guard. That's why we are keeping in the one copy of Metaverse. And that's everything for the main deck. I'm going to speed through the side deck before we get into the extra, because there are things in the side deck that do obviously dictate our extra deck. Triple copies of the Dimension Shifter. Listen, I said it earlier, this is a die roll deck. You really want to go first, and it really hurts when you don't. But if you have to go second against those tier players, especially in games 2 and 3, you want to stay ready, and Dimension Shifter is one of those sacky ways to do so, okay? You just bring this in and try and deal with them that way. It would be foolish to not play Dimension Shifter in the side deck because of the potential of it being a blowout, and then how quickly Dragoon can sweep in after that to clean up the remainder of that game. If you Dimension Shifter them on their turn, and then establish your Necro Valley and Dragoon on the follow-up turn, you should be winning. So that's the logic behind that. Moving on, we've got triple copies of Dark Ruler No More. One of the matchups that you will struggle with most if you're trying to play this deck nowadays is Sprite. Sprite is still diabolical. You guys know upwards of 2 to 3 Toad Negates, backed up with things like Sprite Red or Sprite Carrot. I love the Sprite deck. I love playing the Sprite deck, and I know how powerful it can be, which is why Dark Ruler is an absolute blowout in that matchup. You have to take care of those Omni Negates that would stop your Red Eyes Fusion from resolving, and then you bring the Dragoon out onto the field to clean them up. And the other cool thing is, when you have the Necro Valley up, you remove Sprite's main strategy to outing Dragoon, and that is Sprite Smashers. So really important to be playing the Dark Rulers on the side for that particular matchup. Moving on from there, triple copies of Cosmic Cyclone for the back row decks. It's also not bad to bring in against the tiers to deal with the crimes in games 2 and 3, as well as the field spells and any other problematic stuff you might see. It's also obviously broken against the Flaunderies to knock out their trap card in the draw or standby phase before they have the ability to resolve it. So I'm a big fan of Cosmic for that reason, as well as if you run into the Runics, which are still very real. They're seeing integration with the Naturius strategy. You do not want them banishing cards off the top of your deck on your turn, which means you really got to hit them with that Cosmic to knock out that fountain as fast as possible. And that actually does lead me into a quick little dovetail story here. I do want to spend time talking about this. If you do play against the Runics, it's obviously an uphill battle. If they hit your Dragoon pieces out, it's not looking well for you. But here's the thing about that. You can still play with your Gravekeeper monsters and your Fenrirs and try and stay alive and beat your opponent down as much as you can. The thing is, you're playing such a simple strategy that it really still has the chance to win. Runic is a tough matchup, and Tier, when they're milling those cards out of your own deck with the Ishizu monsters, is also very tricky. They could very easily knock out one of your Dragoon pieces and leave you left for dead. However, this is just the situation we're in. We kind of have to play around and deal with it, and we take as many steps to be prepared as we can. That's why we have things like the shifters built into the strategy. In fact, if we hit our opponent with something like Royal Tribute and they do pitch a Mill 5 Ishizu monster, they're very unlikely to actually opt in to using the Mill effect because they're going to be dumping them all into the grave for absolutely no value. So it makes more sense for them to just not use the effect. Keep those things in mind when you're playing this deck. Anyway, tangent over. Triple copies of Cosmic, absolutely. Follow that up with triple copies of Super Polymerization, another strong going second option for almost any matchup, whether it be Branded, Tier Element, Sprite. We've got every single target you could ever dream of in the side deck, and this is an absolute staple for when you're going second in any of those matchups. The reason why I don't put this card in the main board is because it's very high cost. Having to discard that one card, I think I say this every time I do a profile on this deck, is that you're playing with such few resources but relying on some of those powerful blowouts in the history of this game. So you have to balance the two things. Super Poly is great, but I think its home is in the side deck. Final card in the side is triple copies of Solemn Judgment. When you know you're going first, you can slip on out either those Imperms or those Forbidden Droplets, put in the Judgments, and absolutely blow your opponent out of the water when they try and hit you something like a Twin or a Lightning Storm or an Evenly Matched, and you don't have to waste your Dragoon effect to do it. It's another way of also playing around Triple Tactics talents, which will definitely be a threat to you, especially in games 2 and 3. So having those Solemn Judgments locked and loaded with the Omni Negate is a wonderful thing that every side deck that's playing the Necrogoon strat should be having in there. Moving on now, it's time for the extra deck, ladies and gentlemen, and we've got our boy Dragoon, Bing chilling here, front and center. Guys, I have to apologize. I no longer own the Starlight one, but we got this nice secret guy subbing in for him right now, and he's doing a fine job at negating anything our opponent can throw at us, as well as being indestructible by card effects and untargetable. I don't have to tell you how much of a beast Dragoon is, and even in the year of our Lord 2023, he is still going to be stealing games. You don't believe me? Build this deck and give it a shot, and you'll see for yourself. Moving on to the Link monsters, we're playing very, very few. I'm just playing one copy of Nightmare Cerberus, one copy of Nightmare Phoenix, and then one Codebreaker Virus Swordsman as another way of outing the Guska, theoretically. You will seldom ever actually touch these cards, but it's good to have them in there. At worst, they're Prosperity Banishes. At best, they're actual forms of removal. And then I'm also playing a few Exceed monsters. I have the one Gaga Cowboy still in here. I'm not sure if you guys remember, the last time we did a profile on this, I had a replay at the end where we actually burned our opponent for game with Cowboy. It's just a funny little thing to have in there, and obviously it can be a time win condition if you're playing this in a real tournament. Follow that up with one copy of Baguska, which is theoretically summonable. Same thing with the Evil Storm Excite on Knight, and these all pair very nicely with our boy Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. If you needed to go for a Zeus line, it is there, but it is very high investment in a deck like this, so seldom will you ever. Finally, we're going to move things along here with our Super Poly targets. I've got Garura locked and loaded. I've got Mud Dragon locked and loaded. Starving Venom, Predaplant Draco Stapelia, the Eldritch guy, the Chimera dude, and finally our Pendulum chick, who, you know, Draco Slayer's a real deck right now, so I think this actually is a very rational Super Poly target to play. You can throw in any Super Poly target, adapt it to your local meta. That's how you should shape out the final parts of your extra deck. But guys, that is it for this Necrogoon Gravekeeper deck profile. I really hope you enjoyed. I always love showing this deck to you guys, and I hope you learned something. Maybe you're going to give this a try, and if you do, please let me know your results in the comment section down below. Alright guys, before we wrap up this video, I wanted to demonstrate to you how this deck works in practice, and what I'm actually going to show you is a very special recording from my Monday Night Versus series with my boy Rez, and it is a fun match between my Necrogoon deck and his Madolche strategy, so you definitely want to check this out and see the Necrogoon in action, especially when everything goes all according to plan, and you see how truly diabolical it can be. But without further ado, let's get into it. Starting things off, I am actually going second in this particular match, but it doesn't make a difference. Look at how great this hand is here. He ends up starting with the Mageline. I let him know at this point, you're going uninterrupted, bro. Just go ahead. So he doesn't know what he's up against. He sets up the Dweller just to be safe. I did tell him we were playing anti-meta, but he might have thought it could have been some Drytrons for all we know. He's doing his full combo with the Petting Sessoir, going into the Hoot K, getting Messengelato, Search for Salon. He's going to end up setting up the Dweller with the Glass Souffle, as well as the Promenade trap card. Now, the Promenade is a little bit problematic, because this could negate our Red Eye Fusion, but not if we play it out properly. So go for the Insight, grab the Fusion, go for it straight up. He goes for Promenade, chain Droplet, so the Promenade loses its target. Then we can establish the Dragoon, blow up his monsters. He ended up not chaining the Exceed monster, which ended up punishing him by negating it with Droplets. And then I was able to blow it up with the Dragoon as well as the Dweller, swing over his other monster, and then he's doing some plays. But I don't really care, because I know I have the Tribute, and I know I am likely going to hit this Necro Valley off of the Pot of Prosperity, making it live. I don't care what he searches or adds back to his hand, because I'm going to throw it right back into the graveyard, just with the Royal Tribute, and then he top decks a Dead Hootcake, because you can't use it underneath Necro Valley. And Madolche is actually a deck that has been topping recently. He messes with me big time here. He makes me go first. I was siding to go second. I open up with the Red Eyes Fusion. He has the Ash. My back row is okay. I've got a Torrential and a Droplets, and I've got that nasty Dark Magician in hand, that thing you never like to see. His opening is very strong. He starts off with the Fenrir, he's going through his plays, bringing back Petting Sessoir, getting a free summon for Angeli, proceeding to combo, but I get a nice opportunity for a juicy Torrential here, but I might have done it a little late, because here he's able to get a free search off the Messengelato. He ends up going for the Venusilph in hand. This is going to allow him to extend a little bit further. I think there's a little bit of a misplay here. I don't think he meant to summon the Fenrir, so he ends up, I think, fixing that later. But he continues to do his combo at this point. Yep. Alright, so he ends up going for the Hoot Cake. He hits me for some damage, and I'm like, there's no real reason to Droplets anything at all here, especially considering both the cards in my hand are dead, and I need to keep the Dark Magician no matter what, I decide to concede after this point. He's got too much. Next turn, he's going to go to town. So, proceeding into game 3, though, this is just when everything works perfectly. It was perfect. Red Ice Fusion, searched. Necro Valley, searched. Prosperity, grab Tribute. That's all she wrote. Let's take a look at my boy Rez's hand. There's 4 monsters in there, and I'm not doing this to throw him under the bus. I think his Madolche deck is diabolical, but I just happened to do the Necrogoon thing, and you can really see how powerful it truly is when everything goes according to plan. And given how consistent this deck can be, that happens quite often. So anyway, guys, give this list a try. That's all I'm trying to tell you. It's a fun time, and I think you're really going to dig it if you do give it a shot. But let me know how it works for you in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe on the road to 10K, and I will see you all again very soon. And check out Rez. Link to all his stuff in the description down below. LoganJYA sign off. Have a great day. I'll see you chumps later. Peace.